Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and I am here to introduce you to college admissions representatives and other professionals in the field of college admissions. Our purpose is to serve you, the students and parents, so that you may gain insight straight from the people who ultimately make the decisions. Regardless of whether you apply to a particular school being highlighted in a given episode, you should listen to all of them, as each guest will give you tremendous insight and advice on every aspect of the college admissions process, prompting you to come up with your own follow-up questions for when you visit campus or meet with a college admissions representative yourself. Don't forget to visit our website, www.collegeadmissionstalk.com, or the show notes of each episode to access the alphabetical list of all the colleges available with the related audio link to the right of each school. The alphabetical list provides you with on-demand access to all of the episodes so that you may listen whenever you wish. And if you want to receive links to episodes before they are released on the podcast, along with other related resources, please fill out the email opt-in form also available on our website and in the show notes of each episode. Lastly, please email me with any questions or comments at collegeadmissionstalk@gmail.com. So are you ready? Let's talk about it. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Dysean Alexander, who's the Assistant Director of Admissions and the ROTC Liaison at Lafayette College. Dysean, how are you today, man? So good to have you.
I'm doing well, John. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I'm so happy to finally have Lafayette on the podcast, so let's get right to it. Dysean, what is it about Lafayette College that you love, and what are some of the distinctive academic programs or majors that set it apart from other colleges?
Yeah, no, John, I'm excited to be on here. Obviously, chatting with you, but talking about Lafayette and some of the special and wonderful things that we offer. I know this is something that when we tried to put on the board, emails get lost in the shuffle. But coming on here and just being able to talk about Lafayette and what makes it special is something that I'm always willing to highlight. And specifically when it comes to, I think what are those things that makes Lafayette special? One of the things that I tell students is it's one of those schools that is a smaller size school where we still do things on a big school level. It's kind of that blend of the best of both worlds, where, we have a small community, only about 2,700 students, but we're renowned for then having our Division I athletics. We're that small liberal arts college that allows you to come in undecided, but then we still have a full-fledged ABET accredited engineering program. So, it's this kind of best of both worlds where, there's a lot of similarities that we have to small schools, but then offer some things that they can't do. And then a lot of similarities to big schools, but then also offer some things that they can't do either. And I think the most special thing that comes out of there is that it fosters this collaborative community. Our students know that when you come here, you kind of have a lot of unique things to pick from at Lafayette. So they end up doing multiple things, and they collaborate with students from different departments. They collaborate from their professors to the community. So a lot of ways where students are really kind of coming together and building some amazing things here. And then throughout the programs, more specifically, I always highlight kind of what I like to call the big 3 E's. So we've got our engineering, our economics, and our English. I think each of those programs have so much uniqueness to them from, like I said, liberal arts and an engineering perspective. That means that our engineers can come in undecided and they don't have to declare until the end of their first year. And then they have some real unique programs to pick throughout there. When it comes to English, we offer not only, English, but a focus in creative writing. We even have specific minors in like literature and translation and documentary storytelling. And you can even take a class in comedy writing. I'm not going to guarantee that it makes you funny, but you'll know how to do a joke from start to finish, which is cool. And then when it comes to economics, we don't offer a full-fledged business degree, but I always tell students our economics degree still gets students prepared for their careers in business. And we've been able to have heavy hitters in the world of business, such as the founders of Vineyard Vines that are both Lafayette graduates. The current CEO of Levi's, Chip Berg, is a Lafayette grad. So our economics program still has a lot of depth to it to allow students to be primarily prepared for careers within like finance and accounting, but still get that business backing to do major things in the business world too. So those are always the highlight programs that I like to jump out with, those big three, because it also shows, even though that engineering is something that stands out because it's so unique at a liberal arts school, we still do kind of everything well within our other departments too, which is neat.
So you mentioned D1 athletics, your big three E's, which include engineering, economics, and English. And you mentioned it, and I know that Lafayette College is known for its commitment to a liberal arts education. So, Dysean, how does the college integrate liberal arts principles into its curriculum? And what advantages does this approach offer to your students?
Yeah. So, as much as we build into, our STEM programs and as much as we offer a lot of different unique programs for students to explore within the social sciences as well, we pride ourselves on being that liberal arts institution. So, when students come here, we believe that, still receiving a well-rounded education and taking courses that are within your major field and outside of your major field just allows our students to be able to be that much more beneficial, in their post-Lafayette careers and their post-Lafayette journeys. Students, when they come here, they understand that kind of right from the get-go. So one of the ways that we definitely foster the importance of that liberal arts education, showing students the benefit of it, is through our first year seminars. So all students, when they come here, they have the opportunity to take some really unique classes in the first year seminars that allow them to kind of look at how concepts that maybe you didn't think could go together can go together. Taking two different majors and saying, hey, we've had students explore these in the past, so we're already going to show you how you can continue to explore them. Or, did the other school tell you that engineering and arts don't go together? Well, we're about to show you how it exactly goes together. And that just allows a lot of students when they come here from their first year to already kind of start thinking about, what is that benefit of a liberal arts education? What is that benefit of, I'm taking my major classes in here, but the fact that I have to take another course in the other discipline, what does that really open me up to and what access does that give me? So all students, when they come here, will then take our common course of studies, which means they will explore the four academic divisions in engineering, natural science, social science, and the humanities as they kind of build that well-rounded education throughout their 4 years. And that just allows us to have some really unique courses. Two of the ones that I'll highlight real quick, we offer an opportunity in first year seminar for students to do one of the more popular ones, which is culture and coffee, where students are actually looking at how coffee has had an impact and the cocoa bean specifically across the world. In certain countries, it's a big export, the cocoa bean. They also treat it as, it's a nice little thing that culturally has a significance to, your dining experience. And the cups are small because you sip it and you savor it. Whereas here in America, we've turned it into, one of our biggest entities as far as Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and the Wawas.
Absolutely.
So it's cool to just look at how, coffee really has these bigger implements, not only culturally, but also economically. And our students can look at that from a unique lens. We've had an experience where students have had the opportunity to do stage crew design and looking at, theater buildings. So that's a concept of bringing together engineering and theater and saying, yeah, this is how these two actually do overlap. At other schools, these may be totally different departments or totally different schools. But here we kind of look for ways to find that intersectionality and ways that we can find, the collaborativeness between disciplines, which is cool.
Well, that's really cool. And I love the different cross cutting opportunities that the students have amongst all of your different departments. You mentioned engineering, natural and social sciences, along with your humanities. But Lafayette prides itself on the liberal arts mission while again making sure your students are well rounded. Now, I know that Lafayette College emphasizes a sense of community and engagement. In fact, I recently read that your retention rate is at 91%, which is terrific, as the national
Yeah.
average is at about 70%. So, how does the college foster a vibrant campus life? And what opportunities are available for students to get involved outside of those classrooms?
And that's automatically from the gate. Students are going to feel that vibrant community that we have here, just because it's that smaller, personal learning environment. That's 2,700 students approximately. That creates a 10-to-1 student teacher ratio and about 18 and a half students per class. Now, John, please don't ask me how you get half a student. Last I checked, they were all full with top and bottom, but that's the statistics that they give me to share. So that's the statistics that I'm giving you. But overall, what that means is that, our students really build that personal relationship, not only in the classroom with their professors, but also outside the classroom with their peers through their connecting points in their extracurriculars, their activities, and just overall, moments throughout their 4-year journey. So really kind of fostering that community comes naturally from like our size, But then what we do outside of there through having, our 200 plus extracurriculars, our orientation efforts when students come to campus, and the opportunities for, since we're fully undergraduate institution, for students to engage with research, but also engage with their interests, with things that they're trying to do to get hands-on experiences as early as their first year is what I think allows a lot of students to not only come to our campus and, obviously start their college journey, but then obviously just feel the opportunities be accessible as early. They get a lot of those questions answered early on as far as I'm trying to figure out my major and my decision. Well, we've got peer mentor groups to help you out because, we have those personal environments where you can connect more one on one. I'm trying to get involved with this thing that I was already doing in high school and I want to continue to build it. Well, the fact that we're fully undergraduate allows you to start that as early as your first year. I've got multiple interests in things that I want to start. Well, we've got 200 plus clubs, and the reason why we have them is because students have the opportunity to start clubs that they don't see here. So I think with students knowing that they have so many opportunities to, one, come here and hit the ground running, but two, be given that additional support if they are still undecided or trying to maneuver it, is what allows a lot of our students to feel connected to the community. But outside of there, as much as I love to always talk about Lafayette, I am also a lifelong resident and born right here in the area of the Lehigh Valley.
Born and
So I
raised.
always, born and raised right here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, was our neighbor in town. So I always like to tell students, I think the biggest thing that surprises students when they come here is that additional access that you have in your backyard in the Lehigh Valley. It truly is a college town. Along with Lafayette, we have 6 other colleges and universities right here in the Lehigh Valley. So, on our campus, you have that smaller environment. But then when you go into the Lehigh Valley, you have approximately 10 to 12,000 college students that are living here throughout the academic months. So that allows students, I think, even when they go off campus, to still feel that same vibrancy, that same community feeling, because, there's going to be those exciting events that happen, like the festivals and the semi-pro sports games and the amusement park that we have over in Allentown. But knowing that it truly is a college town, that means the opportunities for jobs, internships, volunteering will also be abundantly available in your backyard. So I think students just feeling that community, not only on our campus, but also outside of it, is what allows our students when they come here to be like, hey, this is a place where even if I don't have all the answers from day one, I know I'm going to be able to figure it out. So with that, I think that's what helps that retention number, which is cool.
Well, that's definitely cool. And there's no wonder that you have a retention rate of 91% because you really have something for everyone, both inside, outside of your classrooms. And so I could understand why, after students finish their freshman year, they're returning to make sure that they continue with their education at Lafayette College. So, Dysean, so many parents and their students are interested in the college application review process, obviously. So, could you walk us through your college application review at Lafayette, and what factors does the admissions committee consider most heavily when evaluating those applications?
Yeah. So first and foremost, up front, we're members of the Common App. So if there's rising seniors that are listening to this, they're probably about to approach that big old daunting Common application that all the seniors that are about to graduate just dealt with, and hopefully still have some hair left and didn't pull it all out while they were going through it. But it is the way that you apply to Lafayette. And I tell students, the Common application it may have some differences for every school. We do have our supplemental questions on there. We do look at, certain sections a little bit differently. But overall, as far as when we're looking at students' applications and kind of those factors that we're considering for admission, 3 big things really jump out. And it's going to be, first, the student's rigor. So we always talk about, students trying to take the most challenging curriculum that they can within the context of their high school. That's something I always try to convey to students, is because a lot of students know, hey, I may be able to do amazing things here at my high school, but I know when I'm applying to college, I'm going to be compared amongst students from all over the globe. And I let students know that, when we talk about academic rigor, it's about taking advantage of the curriculum that's offered to you at your school. Another student may have had the opportunity to take 15 APs, but if your school only offers 6 and you've taken 4, hey, you've pretty much gotten close to maxing out what is available at your institution, and that still has a lot of value. So just challenging themselves, where those opportunities are available at their school, depending on the curriculum that they have, is a big thing that we look at. We obviously look at involvement. But I tell people, when it comes to involvement, the main things that I really want people to focus on is leadership and innovation, because these are the 2 places where that's really going to start to differentiate, what type of value we hold to those interactions, or those involvements. So when students, when I say leadership, I also want students to not think this means you have to be president or captain of everything you're involved in. It just means you have to look for opportunities to be more than just a member. It shows that you took that additional step from just being a member of your student government to being the secretary or to being the treasurer. Now, if you made it to vice president or president, that's awesome. Shoot for the stars. But just taking that step, that's more than just being a 4-year member, shows a little bit of that leadership, shows a little bit of that more investment to what's important to you. The innovation piece shows where, a lot of students unfortunately may not have the opportunities to get as involved in school activities or outside of school clubs, whether they have at home obligations or maybe they're already involved in a program that unfortunately just takes up a whole lot of their time. So students are like, well, I don't know what more I can do, or there's no opportunity for me to do more. And this is where that innovation comes in. It's like, okay, well, if you can't do more, how can you innovate what you're already doing? If you can't do something at school because they don't offer it, what maybe is in your community that's available for you to kind of get it started? I tell students, that's something that we look for in the application, because if you're already innovating and starting things in high school, that gives us kind of that reassurance that when you come to college, you're going to continue to do that. You're going to continue to grow. You're going to continue to build, especially because college is where you hopefully have more time, you have more resources, you have more support. So that's where we just want to know if we're seeing that already in high school, then that's going to give us that reassurance that you're going to continue to do it in college. And I'll give some examples real quick, because I know students are like, how do I innovate? I can't, not everybody can start a club at school, and that's fine. Like, some of the smaller examples that I've seen is, there was a student who I remember 2 years ago, I was reviewing their application, and they were manager of the basketball team. And that's the only thing that they could do, was manage the basketball team, and they enjoyed doing it. But as far as their at home things that they were dealing with, that was really the only club that they could consecutively do all 4 years. So when they got to their junior year, they started doing kind of like motivational cards for the players. So they would write like little post-it notes as far as like, hey, have a good game. Hey, make sure you get rebounds. And then they would give them like a little care package of like, sweet treats, like, some Smarties or some candies, like little things to help them out. Like, that's innovating. They're not moving up in leadership. They're not being given more responsibility. They didn't create a whole new job or position, but they looked for a way to say, hey, I did more than just show up and take the stats. We had a student who, we have the engineering program here, and obviously students that are looking for engineering schools, whether it's at Lafayette or another school in the country, they're going to be competitive students. So a lot of students are sometimes saying, if I do have those strong grades, and I do have, that strong involvement, and I do have the research, what else can I do to make myself stand out? Well, a lot of kids in today's day and age exist in a very accessible world, where you have technology at your fingertips, and you have this other amazing thing called YouTube University.
Hmm.
And there was a kid who 1 year he had applied to Lafayette. He was interested in mechanical engineering, and in his common application, he had attached his resume. And in there, he had talked about how, one weekend out of his summer, he just decided that he wanted to turn his bike into a mechanical bike. And he ordered, the kit from Amazon, which I think maybe cost about like 75, 85 bucks. And he went on YouTube and followed the step-by-step directions to do it. And he turned his bike into a mechanical bike. So those are those things that, like I said, you have so many tools, so many ways that you can innovate and add that additional depth to your common application and your college application process that I don't think a lot of students think about. But like, those are those small innovative things that can really allow you to kind of just stick out from the crowd. And then the last biggest thing, as far as my big three, is demonstrated interest. Now, I know some people listening may know about demonstrated interest, some people may not, but know that that's just kind of how you show love to a school. So, when you call us or email us, when you visit us, when you go and do an interview, that's demonstrated interest. Some schools track that, some schools do not. Lafayette is a school that does track demonstrated interest. So us being, a selective institution, that's something that we do factor into the admissions process as well. When students take that time to come and visit us, when students, take the opportunity to do one of our interviews, those are things that, we do also hold in regard throughout the application process. So those are things that, when we're telling students, hey, if you have the opportunity to connect with us, make sure you do it. And those students that unfortunately can't do it, we don't hold it against them. But those students that have, shown, hey, Lafayette is a place that I want to be, Lafayette is a place that I've connected with, we do kind of then show students, hey, we see that and we recognize it. School.
Well, that was one of the most comprehensive answers we've ever had on the podcast in terms of the application review process. You talked about three major themes. Number one, rigor,
Mm-hmm.
involvement,
Mm-hmm.
and then demonstrating your interest. So with the rigor, I'm glad you talked about the fact that it's the rigor based on the context of what's available in your high school students. So, for example, if your high school only offers 6 AP courses, as Dysean mentioned, and you took 3 or 4, well, that's pretty good, right? But if your high school offers, 30 and you've only taken 1 or 2, then maybe it's going to look a little different, right? Again, it's the context of what is available to you in your high school students, and the admissions reps, if they're local, they know your school inside and out, but they do look at something called the school profile where everything is listed: grade distributions, types of courses offered, what's weighted, what's not, and so much more information. So they know inside and out what's
Yep.
available to you. So take advantage of it, whatever that is. And it's going to differ because obviously you're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of applications from high schools throughout the country and beyond. Second thing you talked about was involvement. It doesn't mean that you have to be the president, but show your innovation, right? And you
Yeah.
gave so many great examples on how to innovate while being part of whether it's a club or even doing something outside of the school. You mentioned many times people have home obligations. Well, students, if you have to do something for an elderly relative or a younger sibling, indicate that, right? Otherwise, you're leaving people like Dysean and other colleagues of his to speculate as to why you might not be in 5, 6 clubs or whatever it is in your school. And lastly, you talked about demonstrating your interest. And you're right, many schools indicate that they do track that. In the case of Lafayette College, they do.
Mhm.
But what I want to say to the students is even if a school doesn't track you demonstrating your interest, it's very important to do so because it's just adding to your own research on the institution. So that, for example, if you have to write a supplemental essay, perhaps the question is, why Lafayette College? By taking the time to demonstrate your interest by visiting virtual events, talking to reps at a college fair when they visit your high school, you're going to have a better understanding of that college. And so you'll be able to articulate better why and how you see yourself at this school throughout those supplemental essays. Would you agree with that, Tyshawn?
Yeah, John, I'm thinking maybe you've applied to Lafayette College in the past because that's the exact question that we actually have
I'm
on
not
our
sure
on the
that I would have
Common App.
gotten in, Tyshawn. I'm not sure. I can't, I'm not going to divulge what my GPA or SAT score was, okay?
Look, but you're doing a one-on-one interview for a podcast right now. This is probably the most demonstrated interest I've ever seen from a student. But no, that's actually the exact question that we ask on our common application is why Lafayette, and that's exactly what you said to it. It's because it's not what we always like to say is when a student demonstrates interest, then we hope that through that you gain demonstrated understanding. Like you gain the
Yeah.
understanding of what is it specifically at Lafayette that I'm drawn to, or what is it about Lafayette that I actually didn't like? I tell students when you tour schools, you're not going to fall in love with everyone that you visit, and that's fine because it's your process and allows you to figure out, okay, this is what I liked about this school, and this is now what I'm going to look for going forward. Or actually, I didn't like that school for that aspect, and this is now what I know I need to look more for. When you demonstrate interest, when you go visit schools, when you ask your questions, it only allows you to get more clarity in your overall process.
Well, thank you so much, Aishon, and we really appreciate that explanation. And what are the different ways, by the way, a student may apply to Lafayette? And is there a benefit to applying one way over the other in terms of admissions or receiving merit-based scholarships?
Yeah, so when it comes specifically to Lafayette College, we are a school that offers early decision. We got early decision one and early decision two, and then regular decision options for students to apply. Unfortunately, we don't offer any early action, but having these two windows for ED, which I'll explain a little bit, what are the differences between those, still give students some unique options when applying to Lafayette. But overall, whether you go ED or regular decision, there's no big advantage over the other besides getting your decision back sooner. And then, we're always transparent kind of in our application process where although since we're liberal arts college, you don't have to apply directly into any school. So we read major blind. If you put engineering on your application and then come here and say, psych, I'm switching to history, that's totally fine. But we do read, need aware. And that is because we are a school that meets 100% of need. So that's something where, we have our financial aid budget each year. And I do tell students, even though whether you go early decision or regular decision, all students are going to, be considered for financial aid. All students are going to be considered for merit awards. But when it does come to that financial aid, obviously, once we get through early decision, the budget is going to be a little bit smaller when we go into regular decision. So we're still meeting 100% of the need of who's accepted. But since we are need aware, then it puts a tighter lens on, okay, well, then what really is the student's amount that we can accept from regular decision. So it doesn't really give students too many advantages. It just changes kind of the timeline of the conversation. I tell students, ED is something that you got to know in your mind to mind, heart of hearts, guts of guts, that you want to go to that school, because there's kind of that binding decision without maybe knowing the whole financial package on the back end. But when students apply to us, all students, whether you go ED or regular decision, are considered for our merit awards. So there's no difference in there. And just to quickly explain, if nobody's familiar with kind of that ED1, ED2 breakdown, how it works here at Lafayette is that our early decision deadline for ED1 is usually going to be around November 15th. Regular decision is going to be around January 15th. Now, I said, understand this college admissions process is your decisions. So Lafayette may fall to being your number 2 school. That's okay. We might be second best. So you might apply early decision or early action to another institution. If it doesn't work out in that process and you're like, look, I don't know why I'm playing games in the first place. Lafayette College, best school on the planet. That admissions rep that I heard on that podcast, Dysean Alexander, best admissions rep in the game. Like, I got to go to Lafayette. If you then feel that way, and you've submitted your application regular decision to Lafayette by January 15th, you then have until February 1st to change that application from regular decision to ED2. What that's going to do is it's going to get you your decision back sooner, usually in that first week of March or second week of March. But it does still put you into that binding agreement of an ED1 applicant. So I tell students it's still something that you got to know that you want to do and that you as a family are in agreement of doing. But it does give students that opportunity to say, hey, Lafayette isn't my number 1 choice, but if it doesn't work out with my number 1, Lafayette is still then the next school that I would like to land at, and give students that opportunity of having those 2 windows.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much for all of the different options and the detailed explanation. We really appreciate it. And how much emphasis does Lafayette place on standardized test scores in the application process? And can you share the percentage of students that were accepted that didn't submit their test scores?
Yeah, so I know the test optional process has been a conversation in higher ed, since COVID and the pandemic and the changes with, students not being able to take it, and then schools being, like, hey, okay, well, then we're going to kind of switch our rhetoric here as far as how we review applications. Lafayette has always had a holistic admissions process. So, we look at everything, not only the testing if students submit it, but looking at your academics and your rigor, looking at that involvement, looking at that demonstrated interest, looking at, the other pieces that you give us from your recommendations to your essays. So we've never hung our hat on saying, the metrics as far as a student's GPA or a student's testing is what we're going to kind of decide on. And obviously now that, it's switched to a test optional landscape, we're really seeing, the strongest of the strongest test scores from our applicant pools. In the past, when it used to be, you had to submit your test scores, you see more of a well-rounded performance as far as students. But now, students are only submitting them if they know they're landing above that middle 50 percentile of, a student's of the school's average scores. So that's one of those things that, has definitely fluctuated, the numbers that we're going to get, but hasn't really changed our decisions. So for this past application pool, students that applied test optional, we had just about over 1,500, and we accepted about 26% of them at an acceptance rate for test optional. And then for students that did submit their test scores, again, just a little bit over 1,500 as far as the admits, and they were at a 37% acceptance rate. So only about a 10% difference between those 2 categories of test optional and test considered. But still overall, selective between both of those categories, because we're also looking at those additional factors, also listening at those additional points that, we give value to. And that's how we stay within that holistic view. And the same thing with as far as then, how we do merit, a student submitting test scores and not submitting test scores is not going to keep students away from receiving our top levels of merit either. So understanding that, it's still pretty much the same process that we have for each. Obviously, students that are applying, like I said, are sending some stronger test scores, but we're kind of still doing that selective review process.
Well, that's great data that you shared. We really appreciate that. And I want to reiterate something that you said, which is that most students are submitting test scores if they're in that mid 50% or higher. So that's a message to students and their parents. When you see test scores nowadays, the numbers are skewed, right, compared to a couple of years back when many schools were not test optional. So just be mindful of that, students, and play the podcast back in terms of that last answer where he gave percentages in terms of those students that submitted and did not. So, what other
Yeah, and
advice? Oh, go ahead, please.
so I know I was gonna jump in there quick, just as the last tidbit. Just know the differences in schools too. So like us, our numbers are always going to be a little bit more skewed too because we're a school that super scores. So for students that do submit their test scores, we're still taking the highest scores from each section, either on the SAT or ACT, and putting into a new score for you. For us, when we're test optional, we say we're solely test optional, so you don't have to supplement anything else for that. Some other schools, if you go test optional, they may require an interview, they may require some other written supplement. So just make sure you know the schools that you're looking at and the differences between them, and also the programs. There's some schools where they're test optional only for certain schools, but they're still test required for certain other schools or certain other programs. So just when you're looking at the process, I tell especially all people that are about to start their college application search, just know that it's not all the same when people say test optional. There might be different criteria that's also within there.
Well, thank you for that clarification and for also reminding everyone that, in fact, Lafayette College is a school that accepts super scores. So that's fantastic. And what other advice would you give prospective students to make their application stand out in the selection process? And are there any common mistakes or misconceptions that applicants should be aware of?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about a little bit with the demonstrated interest piece, but then tie into, like we said, how that shows that demonstrated understanding. Students, some schools may have these supplemental essays on their common applications, or they may have different pieces to their application. Just make sure if this is a school that you're applying to and they have something different, make sure you're really trying to then personalize it to that school. I know the common application, the process, it can get tiring, it can get long, and sometimes a lot of students try to look for, okay, what essays or what questions can I copy paste on, or where can I use an answer that I used previously? And that's fine to get it done and get it submitted, but it's not going to have that personal tie. It's not going to have that same oomph if you're pointing at
Hmm.
specific examples for that school, or you're calling out specific references or people that you've connected with. So as much as you can, try to make each common application individualized to the schools that you're applying to. I've had some students where they've even changed up the first line of their essay to specifically say the school's name. Now when you do that, just make sure you go ahead and double check, because then you'll get an essay sent to Lafayette College that's got Lafayette College of Louisiana, and you was talking about their all that option. So just make sure that you kind of switch it up as you go school to school. But one ways that you can kind of personalize and make sure that you're like, this application is specific for this school. We'll always kind of give you some stronger backing in there, which is awesome. Obviously, connecting with schools, being able to ask questions is a big part. But I tell students, when you have the opportunity to visit schools, make sure that when you're looking at the applications and you're looking at applying, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I want to present myself? What message do I want to send? And I say that because, there's certain things that when students write their essays, they'll talk about certain topics and they're like, I want this school to read my essay and see that I'm creative. And then I'll read that essay and say, okay, I see through this essay that you're determined. If you're trying to convey a certain message, make sure that, your counselors, your family, whoever you're having kind of look over your application and look over the details of your application. When they're done looking at it, not just say, hey, did everything look like it was spelled right? Did everything look good? Ask them, after you looked at my application, what is your visual, or how do you see me as a student? And then if somebody says, I see you as A, B, and C, and you're like, I wanted to be seen as D, E, and F, then you know that, okay, I got to add some other examples or maybe tweak my rhetoric in my application a little bit so that way these other examples will maybe convey that separate message. So because there's a way that we're interpreting these applications as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to meet every student that applies face to face. So your application is really me getting an emphasis of who you are, trying to get a grasp of what your story is, and trying to say, hey, this student kind of fits into this category, or this student represents this type of person. And you want to make sure that your application kind of does the best at conveying those points as far as what you want us to walk away and what you want us to view you as a student. Outside of there, the biggest things that I also tell students, and these are kind of like my this is like my only big warning, and it's crazy that this has only become a warning in the last 2 or 3 years. Do not use AI. Do not use it. Do not try to chat BT us. We don't have, I'm not going to make it seem like there's 100% systems where, maybe people have submitted stuff and we didn't catch it. But when we do catch it, when we do see it, it is detrimental to your application. So I've been telling students, especially in these last 2 years, just do not use it. Like I said in the beginning, I know the application process can become long. I know it's a lot of questions on top of just trying to finish out your senior year, but do not resort to that option because it'll automatically just kind of cancel out your application in the eyes of a lot of schools. So that's probably like two pieces of advice for good stuff, and the ultimate taboo of like just do not try this in today's college landscape because when we do see it, like I said, not only does it hurt you, but then also like when we see the chat GPT or the AI, we send it in an email to the whole team. We start talking about you. We start making memes about it. Like we automatically, you become like put a wanted poster on the wall and like this student tried to dupe us. Like, so do not do that.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's great advice because first of all, it's plagiarism, it's cheating,
Yes.
right? To
Yes.
just, put a prompt in and take whatever it spits out and use it as your essay or use it as your own. So again, Dysean said it here, do not use AI to write your essay for you.
Don't
Another
use it.
thing that I really appreciated that you're saying, which points to the fact that every part of the application or the marketing package has to build upon the next, right? The transcript, that's your academics, activity sheet, your involvement outside of the classroom. But that essay, if someone's reading it, students, it's very important that they're able to say, okay, I learned something new about this student, right?
Hmm.
If you're a highly academic student and your main activity is soccer and you write about the fact that, you're a highly academic student and your main thing is soccer, it's a missed opportunity as there's nothing new learned about you. So be
Yeah.
mindful of talking about something where perhaps you had to pivot, you had to think, you had a question. What were your questions? How did you shift? To give a little insight in terms of your thought process, how whatever it is that you're talking about made you better. And frankly, your growth. That's really the advice that we've been getting on the podcast episode. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to just repeat that. Would you agree, Daishawn?
Definitely, I would agree. The ways that you can show your character more throughout your application, make it come to life a little bit more, but just try to squeeze as many factors of who you are in there is going to go a long way.
Oh, we appreciate that. And what support does Lafayette offer its students to ensure that they continue to be successful once they're on your campus? I ask this question not only for the students who may have had an IEP or a 504 plan while in high school, but for all of your students in general.
Yeah, so through our accessibility services, we offer a lot of resources for students as far as being able to find that support on campus. As you had mentioned, not just for students that maybe have had an IEP plan in high school or 504, they can have those looked at as far as how they would translate to the college landscape or into their higher ed classes. But also, it's broken down as far as what type of support do you really need. Is this support for a specific course? So that would be like tutoring, maybe writing workshops. Is the support because you're a student that maybe has a disability, or you do have, like we said, one of those IEP plans? So these are accommodations that need to be made in the classroom for you. Support for a student athlete. As much as we pride ourselves on being that small school, the fact that we have Division I athletics, these are some serious level programs, and that level of commitment for students. You might just need additional support when you're trying to juggle between your Division I basketball games that you have this week and your midterm paper that's due. So that's different areas of support. But even just looking at students where it's like, hey, you may have been great academically in high school, but just adjusting to the higher education landscape is where students sometimes just find support. So it may not be you need help with your academics or you need help with accommodations, but you just need to learn time management a little bit better
Hmm.
or your study skills a little bit better. So, looking at really just all those angles as far as saying, the college transition is different for everybody. People have different things that they shine in and different things that they struggle in when they come into the college landscape. So we just want to make sure we're kind of covering all those facets. And it's always cool to know that then beyond that, our academic support or our accessibility support and services as well not only look at the academics, we're looking at your full kind of life here at Lafayette. So housing accommodations, dining accommodations, if those are needed. We've had students that, maybe have supported animals on campus that they also need. Students that maybe need transportation accommodations. So it's all these things as far as I think that's what goes back to that retention rate that we talked about earlier, is that there's not just one aspect of your student experience here. There's multiple things that are going to go into your 4 years, and it's not just what happens in the classroom. It's things that could also happen outside of the classroom. So we look at a lot of those things for accessibility, and then even beyond that, our Gateway Career Center, they pride themselves on not only looking at a student's career development, but looking at a student's personal development. So we have, people within our Gateway Career Center who are also looking at students as far as the conversation of DEI, and graduating and going into these careers where you may be historically underrepresented, or going into these careers and you are a first generation student who, for the first time in your family, is going to be managing a career or a monthly paycheck, and that's something that nobody else in your family can kind of relate to. So we have those accessibility services so that you, as not only you're transitioning as a student, but then transition into the real world, can still find that support.
Well, we appreciate that. And, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. Daishan, if you have anything that you want to add, please send it to me. And of course, we'll make it available to the students and their parents in the show notes. Now, back on episode 30, I had a women's soccer player, D1, as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah,
from Lafayette College. It was a great episode for all the
nice.
student athletes out there. So, Daishan, I wanted to ask you about aspiring student athletes. How does the application process differ for them? And what advice would you provide them in terms of making their intentions to play sports in college known?
Yeah, so definitely, first thing I would say is connect with our coaches. The application process for student athletes, you're going to have dealing with the college admissions process here as far as making sure we have everything we need for your application, transcripts, testing, so on and so forth. But as far as handling the recruitment process, that really goes through our coaches. So on our website, they all have their recruitment questionnaires. I tell students that's the perfect place to start. Fill out the recruitment questionnaire. If you are a left-handed pitcher that can throw it 100 miles per hour, you don't even got to worry about filling out the recruitment questionnaire. Just show up. But connecting with the coaches will allow you to kind of have all the answers that you need from the athletic end. Now, here in admissions, we do have athletic liaisons, so people in our department that communicate directly with coaches for certain sports. So to make sure that the communication is happening between what we're seeing on admissions and what they're seeing on the athletic end. But really, you just want to be in that loop. Me, myself, I was also a college athlete. Now, I didn't play at the D1 level, just a little D3 football player here. But there are a lot of steps as far as then when you're visiting schools, when you're going through recruitment, when you go to like the scouting days to be able to show off your talent a little bit more, putting together a highlight tape. There's a lot of steps that just go into also showing off your potential as an athlete. So just make sure that you have all those things together, especially because, those recruitment seasons happen in different times of the year, depending on what sport you're looking to play. So if you're looking to play a fall sport, typically your recruitment is happening throughout the summer and the spring. If you're looking to play a winter sport, sometimes it happens more in the fall. So just knowing also like when your seasons are that you should be connecting with coaches is very important, and just making sure that you're in the loop, because obviously once your season gets started, you're not really going to have time to talk with coaches or visit schools. So you just want to make sure you have all those things together before the season starts, and then know who are all the people that need to get this material when the season's over. Who needs to see this insane highlight tape. You want to make sure that you have all those things in order to be able to send out. So just getting that all together is important. For us specifically, us being a Division I institution, this means that students then do have the opportunities to receive athletic scholarships. Some of our sports do offer scholarships. Some of them, unfortunately, do not, just given the availability within those sports. But that's something that, as you go through your athletic process, whether you're talking to Division I, Division II, and Division III, which unfortunately doesn't offer the athletic scholarships, you just want to know those conversations as far as obviously that factoring into the financial possibilities and the affordability conversation of attending a school or an institution. So it's a lot of questions that you just want to make sure you ask before it's too late. And it's a lot of things as far as know that your process is going to have some additional steps to it. When you're looking to be a student athlete, there's going to be additional things that you want to be on top of. So just making sure that you're asking those questions, engaging with the coaches is the biggest piece of advice that I always give families.
Well, that's great insight. Definitely want to engage with the coaches, but also make sure students you're up to date with the NCAA rules. Check their website. There have been some changes lately. Always check their website for the latest. So, Daishan, this has been phenomenal. Before I get to the last question, I have to ask: is there a question I didn't ask today, or a topic that I didn't bring up that you'd like to talk about now?
No, I think, we covered a lot of great topics, a lot of things that I was excited to hit and kind of talk about. The biggest thing that I always tell students too is like, when you're looking at schools and you're evaluating things, just there's nothing that's not unpleasant to look at or set down. I tell students, when I was looking at schools, I wanted to taste the cafeteria food, because if I'm gonna be sitting here for 4 years, it's gotta taste good. When I was looking at schools, and like I said, I was trying to be a student athlete, I was like, all right, I don't want to play for a school where the colors are green, because I don't like green. Like, it's funny how there's so much to this college process, but I tell students also those small details that people may tell you are not important. Like, think about those things in the college search process too. So, there's a lot of fun things that I think, students focus on, students look at, things students that circle, but there's no stone that, if this is something that's important to you, it's important to you.
Well, that's awesome. And this has been a terrific conversation. Obviously, Lafayette is so lucky to have you, as are we. It does lead us to that last question, which is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide a student and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
Yeah. So first things foremost, the biggest piece of advice that I give students when they're starting the process, especially students early on. I know a lot of people that are listening to this may be just getting to start their college process, so maybe juniors or seniors. But I talk sometimes at college fairs with, freshmen and sophomores who are also just putting themselves out there to get information. And the first thing I tell students in the college search process to focus on is the two biggest things that you can never change about a school. And those are the location and the size. If you know that you want to go to school somewhere in the city and you land at a school where you look out your window and you see cows, you're not going to like it. I don't care if they've got the best professors in the country, the setting, you are not going to like it, and they're not going to change location. If you know that you thrive in a small school environment with personal learning environments and you end up at a school where the enrollment is over 20,000, you're not going to like it. And that school is never going to change from being a big university to being a small school overnight. So those are things that you can never change about a school or university, and those are things that will allow you then to kind of filter out your list a little bit. If you're like, okay, I know I want small, or I know I want big, I know I want city, or I know I want outside the city, those will allow you to kind of filter in a lot more schools that then you can look at on your list. But I said those are the two biggest things that you can never change. So once you figure out those two other things, then you can focus on the programs, the other amenities, all the other things that schools offer. One other thing that I give as far as advice, and this is for as much as the students as it is for the parents as well, is be honest and be transparent. Students, when it comes to being honest, talk about all the things you're considering, regardless if it's something that you're locked into or not. Just talk about all the things you're considering, and then talk about the things that maybe have popped up throughout your college process, as far as interests, as far as what you want to study, as far as what you want to do. Because I know a lot of students, sometimes they may have a very strong interest, but they know, hey, maybe that's not a popular interest, or maybe that's not what my parents do, and they don't want me doing that, and they end up going through their college process, not sharing the full transparency of who they are and what interests them, and then they end up exploring schools that don't have the programs that they want, or land at a school that maybe doesn't have the option of transferring between degrees as easily, and find themselves in positions where they're like, I landed at this school because I made this decision for somebody else, but in all honesty, I wanted to do this. And that's a very expensive decision to make, and then try to transfer out of it. So I tell students, be honest with the people that are helping you, so that way they can give you a lot of options. Obviously people are going to have what they think is best for you, but if they know what you're interested in, what you necessarily like, they'll always try to look for things that kind of filter around there. So you don't have to have the answers to everything. Just leading with what you like and what's honest will allow more of those things to come up. And that's the same thing for parents. Parents, I know that this college application process is stressful. It's a long one, especially it is an expensive one. And I know that that is something that sometimes, parents are obviously asking the most questions about, is the affordability concept. And I tell parents, be open and honest and upfront with your students about that affordability and about what is actually doable for you and your family. Some people have these opportunities where if you want to go to school halfway across the country, that's doable for us. But if you're a student where, hey, you've got other family obligations, or maybe it's not doable for you to go across the country, then be honest with your students about that. Because it's a lot more easier to have those honest and transparent conversations in the beginning of the college process than it is to have those conversations at the end of the college process, when a student has an acceptance for a school that they really want to go to, and then you as the parents or the family has to say, hey, unfortunately we can't make that happen. Like, that's a way tougher conversation to have with your students than just being honest and upfront with them from the beginning, so that way you as a family can make sure you're looking at valuable options that work out for everybody. So that honesty and transparency from both ends goes a long way. And then the last thing, and I know this may sound taboo, this may sound like, man, you had us all the way up until the end, but have fun with the college process, okay? As corny as that may sound, have fun with it. And I tell students have fun with it because this is the one time, like as much as us as colleges seem like these big entities, we've got these big statistics, we seem like these really, really amazing places. We're only these amazing places because of the students that make these places amazing. You know what I mean? So you as the students are the hot commodities in this process. You know, as much as you're trying to impress us as schools and hope that we pick you, like we want to find what makes you amazing. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm in the role of finding reasons to admit students, not finding reasons to deny students. So I want to know what makes you special. I want to know what's important to you. And to be honest with y'all students, this might be the only time in life where people are like, tell me what makes you amazing. And I want to hear everything about it. So like you should feel special being able to tell people, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I like. This is what's important to me. Like this is your moment. You know, you are on the pedestal for this college process. So enjoy being able to reflect back on your 4 years of high school and pick out those things that are important to you, those things that you're passionate about, those things that you're prideful about, and, you know, have a lot of confidence when you're sharing that with institutions, and know that that's you reflecting on basically what you've become so far up to this point into your life, and then building on the things that you hopefully aspire to be. And, you know, I can tell you, as much as it was stressful going through the college search process and visiting schools and checking out programs, when me and my mom or me and my younger siblings, you know, visited schools and did these college tours, those were some of the most fun times when I look back on them. You know, a lot of jokes, a lot of good family bonding. You know, my younger sister, she's a junior in college now. So when we went back through her process, it was just fun in that aspect of, you know, you don't really spend too many times like that with your family where you're being honest about, you know, the things, the dreams, the aspirations you have, and then maybe hearing back from your parents, you know, how they felt when they were at that time and age, and then y'all are talking about it over this big old slice of pizza at this random pizza spot at this college. So like there's a lot of unique opportunities to really just bond and have fun throughout the college process. So like, as cliche as that may sound, have fun with it.
Well, it's not cliche, and it's really cool how you kept talking about being honest throughout the process.
Yeah.
Parents, students, and anybody and everybody involved with it. It really is that important. We know that there's over 4,000 colleges and universities throughout the United States. There are definitely many schools, students that offer you, but not every school is. And
Yep.
Dysean mentioned it. For example, if you want to be in a thriving city, and you end up going to a school, as he said, where you look outside and there are farms and cows,
Yep.
that might not be for you,
Nope.
right? So it doesn't matter whether that school is in the top 20 or what have you. Doesn't matter where your friends are going. You have to be honest with yourself, with your
Yes.
parents, especially about that financial piece. You don't want to see yourself being accepted to a school only to find out that, you know, you can't afford it. And so it's very important to check out things like net price calculators, which every school
Yes.
makes available on their websites, or you could just do a general search, right? Net price calculator, Lafayette College, and what have you. So, Dysean, like I said earlier, Lafayette is so lucky to have you, as were we. I can't thank you enough, and I hope to have you again. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. You're doing great work with this podcast as far as giving people information, access. So I'm just glad to be another participant of it.
Well, we were blessed to have you, and to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care, all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP.